Hello witches and wizards. Today is my last full day in Portland, Maine. It's an absolutely phenomenal time here. I've enjoyed it immensely. Today, Andrea and I are going to take a tour of the city on a trolley. This tour is going to actually take us out to one of the most famous lighthouses in all of the United States, the Portland Headlight, I think is what they call it. For Wizards Unite, I want to talk about spellcasting. I want to talk about different elements that go into making a masterful spellcast. I'm going to break it all down for you coming up next. Day two of my trip to Portland, Maine, and look at that right there. It's beautiful, and if you've never been out here, to me it's an unheard of treasure. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I've never had any desire to come to Maine, and now I kind of think like at some point I might be willing to come back to Maine. Today's video, as far as Wizards Unite is concerned, is I want to talk about spellcasting and the elements of spellcasting, because there are multiple elements and a lot of people are like, well, what makes this and how come this and how come that? The first thing that I'm going to tell you right now is I have no idea why things flee. Obviously, the more rare the encounter, the higher chance of it fleeing. The lower level you are, the higher chance of it fleeing. So keep that in mind. But what I'm going to talk about today is spell casting and the elements that make up the spell casting. I have plenty to choose from around here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this Care of Magical Creatures. So when you tap on the foundable, you will see that this is a baby hippogriff. Now the elements that I want you to notice are the threat level. On the Makuza clock, you saw how it slid over and then slid back. That is going to directly correspond with the threat level. So the Makuza clock measures threat level. This is a low threat level foundable. Actually, it's a low threat level confoundable, holding the foundable in place. That Makuza clock is going to directly affect the green bar that is at the top. So if that Makuza clock slides all the way down into the yellow, your bar will start over at the yellow. There are two hands after the threat clock measures the threat. There'll be two additional hands that'll measure the range of the threat. Okay? Pretty simple. Now the next thing you're going to do is when you cast a spell, it's going to measure your speed and your accuracy, and it's going to begin from the second you touch kind of the mystical little sparkly thing that's there on your spell glyph. So what you're going to do is you're going to touch the screen to initiate the spell cast, and then you're going to trace the glyph. What you're going to look for up at the top part of the bar that is the threat level is you're going to notice a couple of things happen. From the second I touch the spell cast, and since this is a low threat, I'm going to touch it. You see the arrow goes all the way across, and that tells you it's too slow. So the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to measure how quickly do you trace this spell. Once that arrow goes across until you're done tracing your spell, and then it'll stop. And then the arrow is going to start going back towards the right, and that is going to measure your accuracy. So that is how you come into play with the speed and accuracy. I'm going to touch, I'm going to go across and come back. Now you saw that the spell itself was kind of a yellowish green. That means it wasn't all that accurate, but it wasn't all that off of accuracy. Because of my spell casting, the speed went to 1 point on the threat level, and then the accuracy either improves it and gives you some bonus points back, if you want to say, by moving it back to the right, or it's going to take away some points for being too inaccurate, and your spellcast is actually going to go down a little bit. I'm going to do this again. There's plenty to choose from here. We'll just go another Care of Magical Creatures, and then watch how all this plays out. If you go too slow, you already saw what happens. It's gonna say you were just too slow. If you're wildly inaccurate, watch how I get penalized for being bad. Right off the bat, you can see it tells you it's an incomplete spell. You missed the trace points. There are several trace points out through each glyph that you actually have to come within close proximation to, or your spell casting is not going to count. I already know that in this little corner of the E, that's going to be one, so let me hit that. And then you will see there's another one at the end. So you can't just go all wild and get these done. Another thing you'll notice is when I trace that, did you see how orange it was? That meant it was a pretty terrible trace. So now I'm gonna go better. This is more of that greenish yellow. The threat level went down, and then I got bonus points back over to the left. You actually can hit all the trace points, but have a terrible accuracy, and then it's going to actually penalize you a little bit. Penalize you, I think is what they would say up here in Maine. And that is basically spellcasting in a nutshell. You don't want to go too fast, and you don't want to go too slow, and you don't want to go so slow that you're super accurate, because none of that is going to count. It is a speed and accuracy. The speed is what is going to give you your initial basis. The accuracy is either going to give you a bonus, or it's going to penalize you based on the element. And all of these are just low threat levels. The Marauder map here, this is a medium threat level, so you get a little more wide of a range. You saw the 3 different hands on there. Meteor Jinx is one of the easier spells to trace, and as such, just a little bit of inaccuracy you're going to penalize more for, because I wasn't that far off on that trace, but it was orange. Then I come back and do it again, and it's a bright green, and it ends up being a masterful spellcast, and it didn't matter. It still departed on me. That just goes to show all of these levels between your spellcasting, they're going to influence the probability of an item being whisked away by the confoundable. And so it's all a formula, all a math equation. It's based on your player rank. It's based on the probability or the threat level of the foundable and confoundable that you have encountered, and it's going to influenced by the speed and the accuracy. All of it is an algorithm that comes in together. Sometimes like that, you're going to do a masterful spell and it's going to flee anyways, even if it's not all that difficult. As you saw in yesterday's video, and if you missed yesterday's video, I will put a link in the description, or I'll put a link here for you. You saw that I had an emergency with Harry Potter, and I had terrible spell casts, but because I used potions to fluctuate and improve my chances of separating the confoundable from the foundable, it actually worked out in my benefit despite just being a good spellcast. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. I hope you guys have enjoyed your kind of tour around Portland, Maine. I believe the next video is going to come, I don't know. We'll keep that one close to the chest. So until next time.